Alrighty, boys and girls, it's time to do T16 Delirious Essences on our new Behemoth. In the world of content, this is one of the more challenging pieces of content. Not near as bad as T17 Boosting Strats or Rogue Exile, but definitely better than just 8 mod corrupted maps. Delirium makes everything take a lot less damage, and everything does more damage, and quite a bit. So Behemoth has fairly strong layers of recovery in life regen, and strong damage reduction with fortification and spell suppression, but only basic resistance caps and only a small amount of evasion. So being hit by a ton of targets at the same time is always going to be a problem. So you're going to have to jump out of corpse explosions, things like that. Stand in corpse explosions, or you stand in defense, probably not going to have a good time. So as you can see, do pretty solid damage. The speed on the character is phenomenal. Rampage combined with Crave the Slaughter, combined with fortification attack speed from Celestial Braces, gives us like 4 elite slams per second or something, and so we can fly across the map relatively quickly. As you can see, that Lightning Storm does take a toll on us because, again, we don't have any sort of on-hit recovery other than some life recoup from Circle of Life. We don't have Defiance of Destiny or any effect like that, and we don't have a reliable avoidance mechanic like block because we are a two-hander. Now, I did put together a one-handed version of this build, and the damage is just not ideal. By not ideal, I mean it's bad. Behemoth needs a two-hander to really put damage out. Now here is a really big essence mob, because it's no longer a really big essence. We're not running any cooldowns right now, but I do plan on adding Vol Smite to the build as an additional way to have some cooldown damage for particularly tanky targets. Unfortunately, Vol Haste is not an option. Thank you for everything on the game being a fucking spell, but we work with what we got. All in all, I would say he's a extremely fun character to play, and like this travel, so good. And we can free out and kill several of these essence mobs at the same time, even deep into a delirious map where we're probably sitting around 70% delirium this far from the mirror. These mobs are not just basic creatures. Very tanky, they hit very hard, and we do a really good job of recovery and a really good job of taking the hits, as well as dishing the damage out. I'll go back and pick all those up later. I got tired of picking them up. Alright, so Behemoth does good in mapping. Let's take a look at our build. What I have in here is an early budget, a mid budget, and an end-game budget. And really, my in-game character falls in between. So he is above the mid-budget, below an in-game budget. And so we'll sort him like that. So early budget first. I mean, there's nothing complex here. We're running a Debion's Dirge. This could be a Rockiata if you have the currency for that. Just simple crafted or cheap rares here. A Carnage Heart. Ralakeshes are like 60 chaos. Low rolled brace is like 20 chaos. A cheap taming, a cheap Arns, some Flasks, and corrupted blood can't be inflicted on you. Nothing complex here. The skills are going to be identical on all these guys, so I'm only going to go over the skills once. Molten Strike of the Zenith is the main skill. This little guy does not get an awakened elemental damage with attacks. Sorry, buddy. Prepare to lose damage. Molten Strike, Return Proj, elemental damage with attacks, Trinity, Multi-Strike, Volatility. Very simple link. If you do not have 6 links, lose the volatility. Lose the volatility. In order to approximate full DPS, I'm going to go through this very quickly. You can agree with the math, or you can disagree with the math, or you can not like it. I don't care. This is what we did. Molten Strike of the Zenith is a very, 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 very difficult skill to calculate. So what I did was I assumed that you're going to hit the target with a melee hit. You're going to. Either you or the Vol Strike. I then assumed that you're going to average balls hitting with your projectiles, and I did 4 instances of this. This is all set up to simulate 5 attacks. And so we have 1 melee hit, which is technically 5. I'll explain that later. 4 average projectile hits, 1 fifth hit projectile in that attack sequence, and then we have 12 total returning projectiles from basic projectiles. So this should be returning projectiles that are magma balls. And then we have 8 returning fifth hit projectiles, because 1 fifth strike is 8 fifth hit projectiles. So that's how we estimated all this. Now, since we did 5 hits in simulation here, we should be doing 80% less damage. The reason we're doing 85% less damage is because some of the damage returning, exactly 25% of the returning damage needed to be reduced because return projectiles do less damage. So 85% less damage accounts for both the returning projectiles doing less damage, and we're doing a set of 5 attacks. So in simulation, we do 80% less damage because we're doing all of these as simulating as 1 attack. That's all you get. Don't play with these. They're set the way they are unless you know what you're doing. And then if you want to make changes to the skill, unfortunately, you have to change each skill to see how it impacts your character. You can instead just change this one. Go to here. And if your damage goes up by 10%, like we turn off volatility, damage went down by 20%. That's about what volatility does. If you check it, damage goes up by 20%. There's nothing complicated. But if you have to edit each one of these in sequence in order to estimate your damage properly. Second skill, Rage Vortex of Berserking. We are running this for both Culling Strike and a lot of life on hit and a lot of extra clear. So Cull, Multi-Strike Trinity, Pulverize, Elemental Damage with attacks. I'm not entirely sure. Rage Vortex of Berserking and Rage Storm. I'm not entirely sure if there's a whole lot of benefit to running Multi-Strike on Rage Vortex of Berserking's Rage Storm. According to POB, it does work, but I don't know if it actually affects the Rage Storm properly. So that's the only questionable one here. But this is a clear skill. You can run something else there if you want to run something else. Trinity again, of course, Pulverize for extra area and elemental damage with attacks. Leap Slam for movement with brutality, so that when you get awakened elemental damage with attacks, you can run those with a no fizz sword and be immune to fizz reflect, because you do no fizz damage. Or sorry, be immune to elemental reflect because you're going to do awakened elemental damage attacks on this, and then you're taking all the elemental damage off of Leap Slam. False Smite as a cooldown buff that you can utilize to do additional damage. Obviously, if you don't have False Smite active, you do less damage. If you just have regular Smite active, you do less damage than if you had False Smite active. Just to use it. It's not a lot of extra buttons, and it is a lot of extra damage. Entry build. Very solid. Your tree is going to look generally like this. We're just kind of sweeping around the tree and taking important things. You're going to just take them in order. There's no priority here. You really, really want this fairly early, but you get this at like level 40 or something. Just sweep across, take everything. Very simple to do. Mid-budget. Very similar tree. We added in a Cluster Jewel and a Lethal Pride. You can see we run a Cluster Jewel down here. This one is Calamitous, Feed the Fury, Martial Prowess. You could also run Feed the Fury, Behemoth, which would do more damage but have less accuracy. Your choice there. Lethal Pride is in the search tool already, so all you do... Oh, hold on, let me get rid of this notification. All you do is find Timeless Jewel, and I'll have this set up in here. Sort by full DPS. The only thing that matters is that it has Rage. Go to a Lethal Pride. Any filter nodes, generate. So this will be saved in the POB. You don't have to do this every time. But these are fallback nodes for damage. But we need Rage on hit. So we put a 1 here. And we need Intimidate on hit. We put a 1 here. None of these are particularly fantastic ones. All you'll do, like I said, is click find Timeless Jewel, click search, buy one in the list. They're all a little bit different. The ones at the top have good stuff. The ones at the bottom have less good stuff, or maybe no stuff. It's not a long list because we have a very small tree here, but these are all typically very inexpensive. If you can't find one with Intimidate on it, you can get rid of the Intimidate line. Very simple for your Lethal Pride. We upgraded to Rakiata's Dance. We got a better helmet, better body armor, better Celestial Brace. Still have Ralakesh. Got a Yoke. Yoke and Interrogation have good synergy because you get Brittle, Sapped, and Scorched, along with massive amounts of increased damage for each ailment on the target. Because of that, we are also running on our tree chance to poison on hit and chance to bleed on hit, because both of these are increases to our damage via the yoke. And we have in configuration here, not the correct stuff. Bleeding, poison, we are scorching, we are brittling, we are sapping. Probably only hitting like a 7 sap here, maybe a 2 brittle and a 13 scorch. These ailments are based on the total amount of damage that you do to the target. We are raging, we're fortified, we got rampage kills, we have our less damage here, we're leeching all of the time for the most part. We have intimidated our target, and so this will give you a good idea of what your damage is on this tier of the build, which is really, really solid damage at the mid-budget tier of the build. Now, we'll caveat this. Full DPS is the maximum amount of DPS that you can do with everything and all your stars aligned. If you are a hit-based character, you can account for probably doing about 60% of this on the average. This is your maximal DPS. You're doing less. It's okay. Everything's still dying. Now, on mid-budget, we have also upgraded our flasks here. We have Granite, Silver, Jade, Quicksilver, and Diamond Flask. You can swap out your Quicksilver or your Jade for a Ruby Flask if you want to spend a little bit more. Those are good items to pick up for extra damage. On our jewel here, now it has some stats on it that we need and some life instead of just being Corrupted Blood. We have a small prism jewel that is our Enduring Composure for Arn's Anguish generation of brutal charges. Just as a reminder, Ralakesh does not give you charges. It gives you the buffs as if you had the charges. You still need to generate the charges, which we do through Enduring Composure. And then we are also, of course, running our interrogation down here. On our skills, nothing has changed. On our in-game build, skills, nothing has really changed. I've got Enduring Cry and Intimidating Cry in here. You can Intimidating Cry before you Rage Vortex to put out a bigger Rage Vortex that does a lot more damage. It literally doubles the damage of your Rage Vortex for the entire duration of the Rage Vortex. So that becomes 4 million DPS Rage Vortex. It's very good, but it's a button that if you don't want to press, you don't have to. Enduring Cry in here is just to help maintain some endurance charges if you do need them. And then Leap Slam, Faster Attacks, Brutality, Rage Vortex, Molten Strike of the Zenith. All the same as before. Our items are better versions of what we had before. We have a crafted sword. This was a fractured exquisite blade. Crafted to try Ellie with attack speed, global crit multiplier, and strength and crit. We have a helmet that we need accuracy, spell suppression, and chaos res on. Those are non-negotiables. Get some life. Armor, we need spell suppression and lightning res on, as well as reduced extra damage from critical strikes per endurance charge. That's huge. Huge, huge, huge. Make sure you get that. Otherwise, you will be dead on the floor a lot more often than you would like. Again, a Celestial Brace with 10 more max fortification, Ralakesh Yoke, an Amethyst Ring that is a fractured LE damage with attack skills, catalyzed for elemental damage, and then crafted with a Scorn essences for global crit strike multiplier until you hit chaos damage, until you hit chaos resistance. And then we hit the life on it, so crafted on cold res. If you did not hit the life on it, you would need to suffixes cannot be changed and reroll life on it. And if your suffixes are not filled, you will have to fill that with a crafted 3 modifiers. A good taming catalyzed for elemental damage in Arns with a decent corruption on it. In Flask straight down. And then we included a Forbidden Flame and a Forbidden Flesh here. I have craved the Slaughter at this tier of the build because it was like 4 div for the pair. And that's dirt cheap, and Crave the Slaughter is a phenomenal amount of damage. This accounts for 10% of our damage. or 14% of our damage. Very, very solid. Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh. Carnage would be 40% more damage. So instead of 14, it's 40% more. And for the end game, that's what we have. Carnage, Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh, and then better of everything. This is a tri-Ellie recombinated sword, veiled for crit multi with increased crit strength. We have a helmet that's just a better version of the helmet we have. We have armor that we opted for increased life and maximum life instead of the endurance charge crit reduction. And we should probably not do that. This should probably have the endurance charge on it. I think that's a better choice than the life. But we can make changes as we go. So that armor should look like that. That's a much better choice. Celestial base brace with 10 maximum fortification. Double corrupted with frenzy and attacks. Obviously a fun one to make. Ralakesh with some spell suppress. Yoke that has the wrong roll on it. Make sure your yoke always has 10%. That 1% is 5 million DPS. Don't skimp on your yokes. Taming, technically speaking, this taming could be corrupted. And a double corrupted taming would look like this. You would get a good taming. You need to get a good taming, and you need to catalyze it first. Catalyzing it afterwards is an absolute nightmare. So get a good taming first. Catalyze it. Make sure everything is good, and then double corrupt it. If you're looking to double corrupt it, ideally you would hit attack speed and like flat lightning damage with spells and attacks. Those would be the ones that would be the most damaging that you're looking for. And then the difference between a double corrupted taming and a regular taming is 23 million damage. 12 million damage difference. Huge though. Corruptions on tamings are very powerful. So make some, buy some, get some, double corrupt them. Arn's Anguish. We've only got a single corruption on this Arn's Anguish, but as all Arns go, you can just get one. They're cheap. Double corrupting is 80 chaos or something. Make sure you've got a good life roll. Make sure you've got a good fire roll on it. Catalyze it for life. And then whenever you corrupt this thing, you're obviously ideally looking for crit multi during Flask effect and then attack speed during Flask effect. That would be the double corruption that you're looking for. Not a particularly fun one to try to double corrupt, but again, worth it. Big damage increases, those corruptions on the item. Now we are 100% spell suppression, resistance capped, doing 253 million DPS, give or take, and reasonable survivability for a two-handed behemoth with no fucking spells. The character's super fun to play. Period. Behemoth, not a good ascendancy. Right out the gate, not a good ascendancy. There's absolutely nothing redeeming about the ascendancy. You could probably make a better character by literally not selecting an ascendancy and just playing a marauder. But it's fast, it's furious, it's fun, it's engaging, and if you really want a challenge, it's a good class to play and put together. I think Molten Strike of the Zenith and Rage Vortex of Berserking really elevate it to something that is reasonable to enjoy this season. Thank y'all very much for watching. If y'all have any questions, leave a comment down below or come by Twitch and ask. I'm happy to help put builds together and answer questions and fix whatever you've broken. Y'all have a wonderful day. Peace.